Welcome to Leading with Heart, the podcast where leadership meets humanity. I'm your host, Sara Valentine, and in each episode, we'll explore how to bring heart into the way we lead, live, and love. HEART stands for Hear, Empathize, Acknowledge, Respond, and Think. These 5 actions may sound simple, but when practiced consistently, they can transform the way you show up as a leader in the workplace and beyond. So, whether you're leading a team, leading a family, or simply leading yourself, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Heart Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Sara Valentine, creator of the Heart Leadership Framework. Today's guest has led in some of the highest pressure environments imaginable. He's commanded a nuclear submarine. Very cool. Served as a naval aide to President George W. Bush, led in healthcare, writer and author of the book called Beyond the Sea, Leading with Love from the Nuclear Navy to the White House and Healthcare. But what struck me most wasn't his resume, it was one word: love. When most people think of military leadership, they picture authority, discipline, command. They don't usually picture love. Yet, my guest today believes love is the most powerful leadership tool we have. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. Dr. Robert Navy Bob Ronska, welcome to the Heart Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much, Sara. Such an honor and privilege to be here.
Oh, the honor is all ours. So, I'm going to start with your book because I actually met Navy Bob through my program at Rollins, and he came to speak, and it was Leading with Love, and I was immediately just absorbed in it. Then I read his book, and then I had him to the village. Of course, I had to get you to the village to speak. So, Beyond the Sea, beyond a compelling title, and beyond your message, what inspired you to write it?
So, Sara, I I don't know. There was something higher than me wanting to write this book. But I was compelled to write this book not because I'm an author, not that I like to write. It was something that I did in my career that was different. That was different than the way I was taught in leadership courses. And one of the things that you can gather from the book is that we were at the highest stakes that you could ever imagine. But we were on a mission that was personally approved by the President of the United States. We were a stone throws away from the most capable adversarial submarine, and we were behind enemy, like in their back door. If they knew we were there, they would have shot a torpedo at us, or they would have done something to cause us to surface, so they could take pictures of us and send it to USA Today and be national. So it was so much at stake.
High stakes, just a little bit.
Yeah. So we had something that happened, and all indications were that they had us, that they knew we were there. And we had 2 separate indications, and I was about to get out of there. Like our protocol was we're supposed to leave immediately. But it was something that my executive officer, the second in command, he stopped me. He spoke up. He had the courage when he could have easily didn't he didn't have to say anything. And that speaking up against all the protocol, because if he was wrong, he risked his career, he risked his retirement, risked he would never continued on in the Navy. Because when they would have deep dived this, and if in fact they had us, they would have questioned his judgment because every second that we waited could have made it much worse. And he saw something. Again, this wasn't something so obvious. This is, I thought, if you ask 99% of the people in this situation, he saw something that was so different and he spoke up. And in the book, why did he speak up? Was it because it was him? Was it because of me? And I will tell you, it was the culture that I set. And when I analyzed this, there's no other way to explain it. And I researched this through Rollins College, my doctorate. There's no other way to explain it, but it was love. And I'll tell you one other thing that when he was just at my house maybe 6 months ago, we're still in contact. We'll text each other, love you, buddy, have a Merry Christmas. So he came to my house because he was in town and we reminisced. I said, Gary, do you know I wrote this book because of your actions? I said, if we would have left, I would have not had the confidence to write this book or tell the story because we would have been a failure. But you stopped this. I said, I just want you to know that you are the reason it's going to this leadership style that we're going to create and redefine leadership worldwide. I said, you are the reason why. And he tells me, he says, Bob, he says, I just want you to know something. He said, in my previous command 3 years ago, if that exact same thing happened underneath that different leadership and that different command climate, he said, there wouldn't have been a snowball's chance and where I would have spoke up, which meant it wasn't me, it wasn't him, it was the environment that you set. And the first thing that you, the foundation of that environment, that culture is love. And that's why.
Love. Love. Best word. This is where I smiled during your talk at Crummer because your leadership philosophy centers around love and mine centers around heart. And I feel like they're incredibly connected. Leading with love. When you say that, and again, I love your speech and I love the book. What does it mean, really? That what does it mean to lead with love?
So, Sarah, I get this asked all the time. Some think that leading with love is a sign of weakness. People take advantage of you.
Yeah,
But
they don't
absolutely,
think it belongs in business.
it doesn't. But I will tell you, and I'll give you empirical evidence. Now, I'm not here just to be a good old boy. This is what I did in nuclear navy or carried the nuclear codes. Look at me. This is what I did. I am not confident enough, other than knowing my own actions, but I back it up with evidence base. So I will tell you some evidence base and what it is. What really got me onto the definition of leading with love is there was an article that when I was researching, when I was reading the book in 2014, there was this article, and the article was titled, it was from Cornell University. It says, What's Love Got to Do with It? And it was a research article that looked at a longitudinal study of the culture of compassionate love and employee and client outcomes in a long term care setting. And this went above more than healthcare. This went to the railroad systems. They looked at Southwest. And what
Hmm.
they've shown through empirical evidence that if you lead with love, and again, what is love? It's not romantic love. It is the sense that you care for people that you work with, and what it does is that you build relationships. Love, having the sense of servant leadership, which is so much more, you then
Hmm.
build relationships. And there's overwhelming empirical evidence of when you have quality relationships, all your outcomes go up. And so that is what love is. And that's why I titled the book. And that's what leading with love is. And I go in, if you read the article, we can spend the next hour what it is, but it is simply having this mindset that you're in there to serve others. But it is more than just servant leadership. It is servant leadership, but building authentic, caring relationships that you can do. But it's also having accountability that we're going to get to.
Oh, I love that.
Accountability is crucial because if you don't hold people accountable in a just way, you're not leading with love. That is why leading with love is the leadership of tomorrow.
Right. I actually say a lot on here that accountability is an act of care and care is love. So if you care for your employees or your peers, your colleagues, accountability is an act of care. So without it, you're harming others around you. And I think particularly in today's age, accountability is a fearful thing for most people. Um, COVID, when people found themselves jobless without health insurance in the middle of a pandemic, it was a lot of fear. So when they came back into the workspace, it was fearful. And leaders, I think, picked up on that. And from my seat as an HR person, I found that there was a lot of fear in leading people and holding them accountable because you had the great resignation, and leaders are just like, I'm just trying to hold on to my people. So they're thinking that accountability is they can't do it. And Not true. And from my chair. So I love that you mentioned accountability.
And so, Sarah, if I could put this, I think Dr. Grain and I, and we'll get to Dr. Grain for the last 5 years, we took he's the most cited relationship doctor. He's created the leader member exchange. It's the number
Hmm.
one cited relationship theory that has ever existed. He's the world expert in building relationships. And one of the things he lacked, and he realized it after he read my book, was love. And in that article, Compassion Loves, it talks about when you lead with compassion and love, it's the human interaction. It is the open door or is the gateway of building relationships.
Hmm.
So it is essential to have both. And if you look at this, the best way I can explain this and how I led, and it's in every industry, there's for the viewers out there, there's this incredible, go to YouTube and Google Nick Saban and where would they be now? And it's a quick 3 minute clip. And Nick Saban, you wouldn't think love would come out of Nick Saban, right?
Right.
He's hard, but he has accountability. But watch this video. It shows how he sacrifices for his team members, how he has accountability, how he removes barriers, how he treats each individual as the most important person on the team, where they don't have favoritism. And he also, he's hard, but that's what leading with love is. He is worried about giving people a second chance
Hmm.
and making sure that he talks about where would they be now? He would be on the street if I didn't, give him a second chance. That's love, Sarah. And it's sacrificing for each other. So I asked the readers,
Yeah,
just Google Nick Saban, where would they be now? And picture that is what leading with love is.
I love that. And that, yes, I've actually seen that clip and it is very true. It's a great example of what leading with love is. Part of the heart framework, it talks about the H is the start, right? Is hearing. Um, and I use the hear because it's H, right? But it's really about authentic listening and listening to understand instead of listening to respond. So, being that you were on a nuclear submarine and carrying the nuclear codes for the president, how important is listening to your leading with love leadership model?
It's essential. And I did it unknowingly, Sarah, through the crew top three, and we could talk about that. Or having one-on-ones and really having these opportunities that the one-on-ones wasn't for me,
Hmm.
for them. And I would
Right.
prepare for the one-on-ones to tell the person that we're having a one-on professionally development and giving them accolades. It would not be, tell me about the maintenance, tell me what the status of this is, right? It was active listening. So exactly what you're saying.
Right.
But what was eye-opening to me, Sarah, is Dr. Grain's work. If you
Hmm.
look at his relationship, what it is a two-way contract with somebody.
Hmm.
I'm going to be in a contract with you and you're in a contract with me, which means I'm going to tell you or ask you, what are my expectations of you? You're going to ask me what my expectations are of me. And then you're going to talk about professional development, what barriers you have, and so forth. But this is a two-way communication. And it is essential before you start this conversation or these one-on-ones is that you have that agreement. And that's exactly what you're doing with heart is you have to listen and not just not be a check in the box with one-on-one. So
Right.
I did that on a nuclear submarine, and that's why that's why I took the worst submarine to the
Hmm.
best. And we were ranked last. We had the lowest turnover. We had it was like whack-a-mole. There were so many issues. We went from the worst submarine to the best submarine, objectively measured. Had the lowest turnover in the Pacific Fleet for 2 consecutive years in a row, and we scored the highest possible grade on the exam. And what it was active listening, building relationships,
Hmm.
having accountability, and finding the purpose within that submarine.
I love that. That's amazing. And you talk about Gary, um your commander that you listened to when you were in that situation. You had to listen to him. Like if you hadn't listened to him, right, and understood what he was telling you, you may have had a different leadership decision.
Oh, well, but it didn't happen then, Sarah, underneath that. Because I will tell you, what was at stake if we were wrong?
Right.
It was $100 million of taxpayer dollars. If you take the cost of a $2 billion nuclear submarine, the cost of the maintenance, the cost of the time to get there, to get
Right.
this take. But if we were wrong, or if they did have us and we waited, our lives could have been in. So you can imagine what was at stake. But I'll tell you, Sarah, it didn't happen then. It was
Right.
something that we created before. And
Right.
I will tell you, we talked about the crew top three. I would continuously solicit input from the team, which means that was our values and behaviors. They knew that I wanted to hear them. They knew
Mm-hmm.
that their voice was valuable. And if you don't do this ahead of time, when you get to the point where it matters most, they're not going to speak up. So this is something that we did a year ago.
Right. You created the culture.
It
Now, I
did.
remember you telling me particularly about some of the issues the team was having when you came on board. Um, and you really first you heard them enough that you empathized with what they were doing to respond. When you can you tell a little bit about why you put in the crew top three and what was one of the mm, top ones that you fixed? I think it was about computers, if I remember correctly.
So Sarah, again, this is you're completely right. We were supposed to take this new Virginia class, brand new, underneath the North Pole, and certify that Virginia class for Arctic operations. Never been done there before. High risk situation, and there were enemy submarines that were coming out to look for us, icebergs to dodge, you name it, high risk. But it was like whack-a-mole. There was something that was so we were so reactive of fixing problem after problem after problem after problem that it wasn't the ice that was my biggest concern. It was the culture of the crew. It was just
Mm-hmm.
apathetic. People were walking around like they were zombies. And so we had this one final straw that broke the camel's back. It was a major nuclear incident where we didn't do retest properly, where it could have affected the timing of a reactor scram. Clearly, we didn't have a reactor safety issue or a reactor accident, but if we did, we could have caused significant delay in reactor scram. And obviously, this caught the attention of naval reactors.
Mm-hmm.
And so my boss came down, Sarah, and he starts poking me in the chest. And why am I so screwed up? Why is your ship the last one? Basically, if you don't fix this, you're not going to be here anymore.
Right. We all love those talks.
Well,
Very motivating.
but if you look at the Pavlovian effect of most leaders, what would
Mm-hmm.
they would hold accountability. They would
Mm-hmm.
punish the people vindictively that made that error, but they wouldn't get to the root cause. And
Right.
so this is the accountability piece of caring accountability that the model that Dr. Green and I came up with is when do you hold accountable? When you hold accountability, you have to make sure that everything that you are doing, all your resources, all your all your training, all your culture, that you have to look at yourself in the mirror first as a leader to make sure that you don't hold someone accountable before you don't hold yourself accountable first for not giving the resources. And so what I did, instead of holding people accountable because they were having all these issues, I started looking at myself internally. What am I doing? What is the ship doing? And so
Mm-hmm.
I did the crew top three, and I just did simply. And that's why I did the crew top three. I needed to figure out what were the barriers. And one of the things of many was they didn't have enough computers on board. And this was a $2 billion nuclear submarine, something out of Star Trek. And
Mm-hmm.
everything operates off computers. And what that entailed that each sailor had to spend approximately 2 hours of extra time on board that they couldn't be with their families, not because they were extra work, just because they had to wait for a computer because half of them were broken. And the light bulb
Right.
went off there. It was like, aha, the reason why we're having all these issues is because the crew doesn't care for the ship. And why doesn't the crew care for the ship? It's because the ship doesn't care for them. I can't even give them the right computers. So I fixed that immediately, and that was a spark. And that was what was
Mm-hmm.
driving the culture. When you actually develop a culture of people that feel cared for, loved, you know, heard,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to start getting out of that apathetic state. And if I could pinpoint the time when we went to the North Pole about 3 months later, that was the inflection point.
Right.
That was when the crew started to care for the ship, and they were less fearful of making a mistake to get in trouble. And when you get that critical mass of culture, they're going to start policing other people in the ship, and that's where
That's
the
right.
apathy goes away, and that's why I did the crew top three.
Yeah. Which, you know, I think understanding, I know it's some people may try to dumb this down and say, oh, it's just computers. It wasn't just computers. You understood the impact to their families because they were having to stay on board. And if people can't get trained and certified into their jobs, they can't learn their job, they can't perform their job, and then it just becomes an unending circle of insanity that keeps happening. So I love that you were able to empathize and hear them and respond by getting them the tools. You removed a barrier for the team. And to your point, culture, people ask all the time, what is really culture? Culture is the way things are done in an organization. You went from an organization that was dysfunctional, untrusting, fearful, and by a simple tool, a top through the crew top three, you were able to change the narrative and the conversation to then start to build trust a little bit at a time through your response, which
Yeah,
is so important because you
and
heard them and then you acted. And a lot of leaders miss that. Oh, we had a great conversation, but then don't do anything about it.
well, Sarah, you brought up the Great Resignation, great in 2021, and they
Mm-hmm.
surveyed over 100 different 20 different companies across multiple organizations in different industries, 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
The number one reason why people were leaving the organization wasn't because of pay, it's because they didn't feel valued.
That's right.
That's what the crew top three does. And again, what I've seen, I've been in law enforcement, healthcare, nonprofits, military. You would be surprised on the little things that matter. And there's things that are bothering people, and it had nothing to do with the computers. It
Mm-hmm.
was more that we don't have computers, and this organization doesn't care that I'm spending extra time of my
Bingo.
life
That's right.
because they're not supporting me. It had nothing to do with actually fixing computers. It did, but it was the human connection. Like
Mm-hmm.
the person doesn't care for me,
Yeah.
so why would I care for them? But it also what it did is because I solicited that input at crew top three when it came time for Gary to speak up in that critical moment, he it was like natural because we
Right.
did it all the
He
time.
didn't probably even think, am I allowed to say this to
Yes.
Bob? He was probably like, it was naturally organic, like, no, boss, listen to me. We need to do this. But you were able to create that trust and that communication through the top three and the action behind it. And to your point, it sounds like the culture that you you inherited, they just wanted to be heard and seen. A lot of leaders, I think, they throw money or pay at a problem or they praise them once in a while and it's fine. No, people want to know you care about them and they know when you're being genuine because it's reflected in your actions. And if your actions don't change or support them in what you're telling them, then they're going to know. People are not dumb. They know. So I love that example. And the way that you responded and continued to do so, because if I remember correctly, there were other things. It wasn't just computers. Um, and you continued to do this exercise, yes? Like, and you still do. You teach it.
And so I'll tell you, what would hit magical was I continued it every month until I relieved. And the infamous, there was one left, right? One concern when I was about to turn over the ship to someone else. It was my time.
Hmm.
That one thing, I'll never forget it, was, and it's in my book, is the number one, there was only one complaint. And that complaint was there wasn't sufficient variety of hot sauces on the mess decks, like the cafeteria. I started to laugh. If you can get that is and what I found is that they didn't ask for something that I couldn't give them. They knew that. They were asking for little things that can be fixed. And
Hmm.
that get so enthralled, it's about me, 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 me. You're there to serve me and you don't solicit their well-being because you're not a servant leader. Then they stop communicating. They become robots.
Right.
And you'd be surprised when you solicit the things that have been neglected for some time. There's things that are just so easy to fix that it just boggles your mind that they were living with this and they're not speaking up because they just
Yeah.
felt like the organization didn't care, which is directly linked with Dr. Grain's work of outcomes, turnover, safety, you name it. That is the
Hmm.
foundation of success.
I agree. I also love that through your actions and your crew top three, you kept doing it. It was ongoing. So a lot of leaders, they take a situation at a time and they fix the situation, but then they get distracted with their own job. It's consistency. You have to lead with consistency and model the way, and you have to do it with gratitude, right?
So Sarah, this you hit the nail on the head that this is what Dr. Grain and I worked on for
Mm-hmm.
5 years. We have, and that's why he really enjoyed my book because I gave practical examples of like sending thank you notes, doing the crew top three, one-on-ones, right? What we do is help leaders build their day-to-day practices that is based on 50 years of academic research that if you do this, you'll so one of the things that I'll just give you a quick synopsis on, if you look at Dr. Grain's like breakthrough article. It's called 25 Years of Leader Member Exchange, a relationship approach to leadership. It was in 1995. It was the most cited leadership article that I came across in the history of academic and relationships. And what it is, if you read this article, I'll give you a quick synopsis, is that leadership for the last 2,000 years is all about the great man theory. It's about you. It's like picture Patton. You go take that hill. Patton, you got to listen to Patton. You got to go up that hill. But that's not leadership. Leadership is about you, one third. It is about the people you serve. And it's also one third about relationships. How are you building relationships? You're doing one on ones, thank you notes, recognition, you name it. And if you look at a weekly Outlook calendar, just audit yourself. How are you spending your week? Is it one third about you, like meetings? Is it one third about, the people that you serve? And is
Mm-hmm.
it one third about building relationships, like doing commit review boards or doing the crew top three or recognition or just rounding and finding out or fixing little problems you can do it. So what we have built is actual practical tools that leaders can use in a day-to-day things that are based on 50 years. And that is where you're going to start to see the sustained difference.
Yes. I I agree with that 100%. And I think a lot of leaders think that it's one way a lot of times. They forget that it's more than just you. And I think a lot of leaders get caught up in their day to day, right? We have meetings, we have deadlines, but you also have a team that you're responsible for. And so making that time, and trust me, I am someone that struggles with one-on-ones, um, but they really, really do make an impact to the people. Um, at the village, we're doing a book with the five love work appreciation languages. It's a mirror of the five love languages. And it's been eye-opening for leaders to understand you don't recognize people how you want to be recognized. You recognize them how they want to be recognized. So many of the team have been like, wow, yeah, well, I really like quality time, but this person just wants me to tell them they did a good job. So just those simple things, making that time. I like that three stool kind of approach that you have to that.
And Sarah, I can't wait to come back to the village because one of the things we can also do, other than the love languages you discussed, but Dr. Grain, his work on how do you do one-on-ones, what questions,
Hmm.
and not only can you measure it, you can look at exactly, you can do the survey right now to figure out what is the strength of your relationship, and you can look at a national average to see how you're doing. But it will give you tools on how to do that. And in that one-on-one, you do ask,
Yeah.
Sarah, how do you like to be recognized? Do you like to be called out in a bunch of people? Do you like it quietly? Do you like a gift card? What kind of gift card do you like? How would you like to be recognized? And
Right.
if you do that, because it is about you, it's not because I will tell you, when I was at the hospital, I had multiple people say, if they give me another damn $5 gift card, you know, it would have been better if them not doing it all. And what makes it even better? Ask them. How do you like to be recognized? How do you
Yeah.
like, and I'll give you one last thing. I was at, and Dr. Grain, his research is on my mind. And I was sitting at I was traveling, I'm at a hotel, and it was at a Hilton Inn, and I overheard a couple um, teachers, and they went to Sue and said, "Sue, can you believe it? For 25 years during Teacher Appreciation Day, the principal gave me yogurt. You got to be kidding me! We got yogurt, and this is the appreciation we get, right?" And you could just tell she's hot, right? And the principal thought that, "Oh my gosh, we're doing something great. We recognize teacher appreciation. I gave him something." And I went up to the teacher. I said, "Hey, I'm not asking this to, what you do for our young children are just invaluable. You are
Right.
so important." And I said, "What would you like? What would you like?" And she looked at me like, "I'll tell you what I would like. How about cancel some stupid meetings? How about we give us more time that we can grade the kids and we can go home to our families? How about cancel one of those stupid meetings that are a waste of time going forward? I'd much rather prefer that, asking me what it is, instead of getting damn yogurt."
Wow. Yeah. Who would have thought to ask? They don't, right?
That's what
I
leading.
think leaders
That's what
maybe
leading.
think that maybe asking is a sign of weakness, but it's really not, because if you continue to try to communicate or appreciate in a way that the person isn't getting, you're not getting anywhere. So taking the time to ask, you might be surprised, like with her, cancel one of those meetings, please, because yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good one. I love that answer.
but this goes back to Dr. Grant. If you could have a time machine going back, right? Assume that that principal had a one-on-one with the teacher and asked, "How would you like to be appreciated on teacher? You are so valuable to this organization."
Right.
And she says, "Can you cancel the Friday meeting?" "Oh my God, absolutely. We'll cancel the Friday meeting. That's all you want? Absolutely. Love you. Love what you're doing here. Like, really appreciate you." Can you imagine how that would have made them feel instead of blindly just giving them yogurt? And
Yeah.
that's where Dr. Grain's work comes in. This is where we haven't giving leaders a training plan on how do you do day-to-day operations based on 50 years. If you do the step that Dr. Grain did and ask these questions over time, you're going to start to see the engagement, the
Mm-hmm.
return on investment go up significantly because you're building the most important engine of your organization. And it is not you as a leader. It is the people that serves you. That by far is your greatest potential. And yet most of the time we neglect it.
Yeah. I think this model helps people, leaders, on a very practical level. A lot of leadership books talk very abstract.
Yeah.
You have to do this, and then you have to pay for another book, and then they try to take it back into their organization and it fails. What I think is really compelling about your work is that it's practical application they can immediately take back. And I give the example of when you came out to Give Kids the World and talk to our leaders, the crew top three. Several of the leaders took it immediately back and did it. And one in particular was shocked at the answers they got because they thought they were doing everything right. And it turned out they had some work to do. So it was very practical, easy to implement, and it's not speaking in these abstract terms that not everybody can understand.
So, Sarah, this is why I wrote the book. And that's where Dr. Grain was attracted to me. Again, I know I'm speaking Dr. Grain, but Dr. Grain didn't have all the answers. But what Dr. Grain had is how do you build relationships? And then we sprinkled in accountability and we sprinkled in purpose, and it was all infused in love. So I'll give you a quick, I think this is really important to your listeners, why this is so important today and why relationships with heart or love is so important. So if you look at and again, I'm all about empirical evidence. I'm not here just, good old boy, this is how you do it. So if you look in 2023, Harvard came out with the longest longitudinal study of 85 years, and they looked at generation to generation to generation. What made a good life? What made a good life? What was defined of a good life is, were you happy? Were you healthy, both physically and mentally? And what made you live longest? And
Mhm.
they researched this. They for 85 years, Harvard study that just came out in 85 years. And you know what? The number one, by far, almost half of the thing that explained of living a good life, do you know what it was? It was relationships.
I was going to say that or love, one of the two.
But love builds relationships, right? So
Yeah.
they go hand in hand. It was both at work and at home. And so relationships. So what the audience needs to understand, if you dedicate time of building authentic relationships, you're going to find yourself having more time
Hmm.
because your productivity is going to go up. People are going to get more engaged. Absenteeism is going to go down. And not only is this good for business, if you look at Arthur Brooks' studies
Hmm.
out there and happiness and so forth, which is caused by the study talks about happiness is improved when you build relationships.
Right.
Dr. Gray knows how. And so this is good for business, but it's also good for you
Hmm.
because it's going to make you happier. It's going to make you healthier. It's going to make you live longer. There is no downsides to this, Sarah. And that is why building relationships and why it's so important today is because if you look at the digital revolution, the
Hmm.
advent of the smartphone, the World Health Organization has declared loneliness as a world epidemic, and it's equivalent
Yeah.
of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And Harvard just came out that 61% of young adults, compared to 36% of all Americans, have reported serious loneliness.
Yes.
Why are young adults reporting serious loneliness? It's because of the smart, they're in this
Yeah.
digital
That's the
age,
lack of real life relationships.
right? So, what's the remedy to that? We have to dedicate our time as leaders in every single organization to build relationships. We took it for granted before because we knew how, but
Hmm.
this generation, they don't know how to build relationships. And that's why that is
Yeah.
even more important today.
I often get questions about how do you build culture so fast? And I said, you don't. Culture is built in day to day moments that you have with each person you interact with. So if you only see this one person every day for 2 minutes and you only skim the surface, that's the relationship that person knows you by. So it's, trust and relationships are built micro moment by micro moment by micro moment. So the more time you put into them, the more they grow. And the loneliness, I have um, three children who are below the age of 21, and all three of them have grown up in a very tech world, and it's different. And they have struggled communicating and building real relationships because they grew up online. So I think you're absolutely 100% accurate on the relationship building. It has to be, and it can't be fake. People know when you're faking with them, right? It has to be genuine. It
And
has to be.
Sarah, the thing that we struggle, it's not that leaders it's not that they don't want to, but like you said, they get so
Mm-hmm.
involved. Email, they're just strapped to the emails or getting ready for something. And they get so inundated with day-to-day minutia that they forget the most important thing is their people. So it's like I use this analogy. If you really want to change your health and you want to go to the gym, what do you need? You need a training plan. If you go to the gym once, it's not going to matter. You
Right.
need a dedicated training plan. What are you doing on a daily basis to concentrate with small wins, fixing these relationships and getting them built up over a long period of time? That is why culture takes so long to build. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have a dedicated training plan of leadership and a day-to-day process to be able to build relationships, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So we're kind of in the time frame for rapid fire. Are you ready for some rapid questions?
Absolutely, Sarah.
Okay. So leadership in one word, what is it for you?
So, Sarah, I would say it's two words. I
Okay.
teach at the University of Central Florida, and I've really wanted to answer this question. And to me, leadership, if you define it, is two things, and they have to be both. One, you have to lead with love or lead with heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and you need success. So if you think about some of the greatest leaders that are out there, is like Martin Luther King. He wrote a book about love. He changed how we viewed people because he did it with love. He wrote a book about it with love, but he made such a profound impact on so many and he had results. It's the same thing as Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ led with love. What did he do? He opened the gates for all of us, right? It was success and love. But then you had some leaders that really had success, success, but they didn't do it the right way. Those aren't leaders. Those are terrible leaders. So those two things are essential for leadership. You got to do it, as Mr. Rogers said, love and success. It always has to be in that order. And you can't have success first and then worry about love later. Those are the two essential ingredients for leadership.
I love that. Ugh. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Is I think that whenever I made a decision in leadership, it was always asking myself, is this for me or is this for something else or the organization? And I would always use that as a litmus test. And I never steered me wrong. If I did something that was not for me, it was for someone else in an ethical way, I would never go wrong. But every time that I did something because I wanted to be selfish or something, wanted to do something, it always came back and haunted me.
That's really good advice. That's really good. And I think that's the first time I've ever heard that. I love that. And that's very easy to apply. Okay. What's something people would be surprised to know about Navy Bob?
I would say I am I have imposter syndrome. I I
Wow. I am surprised. I'm genuinely surprised right now.
I am still, Sarah, that I'm waiting for the tap on my shoulder to say, hey, buddy, you shouldn't be here. And over my career, commanding a $2 billion nuclear submarine, in charge of the nuclear codes, responsible for Armageddon, 7 billion people lost, right? And, supporting and protecting the president. Obviously have the credentials to get my doctorate degree and so forth, but I still, so when I'm on here and I'm talking about this leadership, it's one of my greatest strengths because I'm not here like this is my way or this is how I did it. I always look for evidence based to back it up to ensure that
Hmm.
it's just not me. It's about using something that I know other people can use. And so, with that, having an imposter syndrome is probably one of my greatest strengths, but it's also one of my greatest fears.
Wow. That is so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And I feel a lot of leaders are going to relate to that. I mean, I've been in HR a long time and I'm still learning. My CEO, Caroline Schumacher, teaches me, I think, something every week. And I'm supposed to be the expert she comes to, but oh, that is so relatable. Um, so if you could tell leaders one thing today from this, what would you want them to remember?
That it's not about you, it's about building relationships, both at work and at home. And what I believe, and this is me, that I believe that our creator has put us on this earth for one purpose, and that is to serve others. And we have all have a unique gift on to be able to maximize that service to others. And we're wired that way. We're not wired to make money. We're not wired to be gluttonous. We're wired to help other people. And so when we get to the pearly gates or whatever faith you believe in, I know that we're going to be graded or gauged on the only commodity is how much good and service did you provide others. That's what I would love for you to take away. And how you do that is you build relationships. And building relationships, that will pay it forward. It was service to others, and you're going to find so much good, not only for your organization, but for the human beings that you're around.
Oh, that is I love that. I love that so much. I often tell people because they'll ask, "How did you get here?" God. there is There are far more qualified people than me to be doing what I do. And I know God gave me what I have. And I just hope I'm serving others the way that He would want me to. So that is so moving and genuine. And I hope every leader out there hears this and is encouraged. If someone wanted to reach you, Navy Bob, how would they go about doing that? What's the best way they can do that?
Um, so there's a couple ways. One is my email is robert.ronska, RONCSKA at navybob, one word.com, or we have a website, www.leadingwithlove, one word.com. And so, or they can contact you
Yep.
and feel free to forward my email. Uh,
Absolutely. He's also very reachable on LinkedIn. I know that one. And I'll be sharing on all the channels on the podcast listening station too. Just so you all who didn't have a pin on them right then, I will have his email in the broadcast. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being here and sharing with us. Your mission is amazing. Um, I absolutely adored this conversation. I think, the one thing that keeps me coming back to the microphone um, is knowing that there are other people like you out there. And I think leading with love is a fantastic thing. It works. I think it is not weakness. I think it is courageous. I think love is listening before speaking. It's telling someone the truth because you know they need to hear it. That accountability. It's showing up even when it's difficult. And as we've talked today, I think I've realized that leading with heart and leading with love, they're really not different philosophies. They're like two puzzle pieces that just connect. They're two paths leading to the same destination. And so thank you so much, not only for your remarkable service to our country, but for continuing to serve leaders everywhere with your message. And I think it's going to go global and it's going to take the world by storm. So it has been my true honor having you on the Heart Leadership Podcast today.
well, thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you to all the listeners out there. And just all I ask is pay it forward and lead with love. So thank you so much, Sarah.
I love that. And to everyone listening, leadership isn't measured by the title on your business card, it's measured by the impact you have on the people around you. So this week, listen deeply, lead courageously, love generously, and as always, lead with heart, and the rest will follow. Thank you so much for listening. I'm deeply grateful. My hope is that you leave inspired to lead with compassion, strength, and heart in your work, family, and faith. If today's episode encouraged you, share it with someone who could use a little heart in their day. And be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen. Until next time, lead with heart, and the rest will follow.